We're 4 friends who live across the globe
and share a love of Bon Appétit's YouTube channel.
So we came together to bring you our thoughts on what BA serves up.
And try our hands at recreating their dishes.
Welcome to Pod Appétit.
Hi, I'm Amanda.
Hi, I'm LJ.
And it's me, Meg.
Yay! Welcome back to another episode of Pod Appétit. Woohoo! We've got a lot of stuff to get through today. We had double gourmet makes last recap episode, and we've got double back-to-back chef this episode. So, you know, I'm quite excited by what we've got to discuss.
Back to back to back to back?
Back to back to back to back. Well, actually, because there's many.
Oh, right.
It's like there's like multiple people in one of them. So
back
it's
to back to back to back to back to back to back. Yeah.
Too many backs.
So many backs.
Okay, but before we get into that back situation, I think we should kick things off by talking about what we've been up to in the kitchen over the past couple of weeks. Anyone want to kick it off?
I'll kick it off because, as usual, I don't have a lot, but I had 2 experiences I wanted to share. One is I had some leftover chipotle peppers from a dish I had done for something, and I chopped them up and I made them into a chicken salad.
Ooh.
Oh, was that the thing with
fun.
Cranberries and walnuts that you shared?
Yeah, dried cranberries and chopped up walnuts and then like shredded chicken and mayo and the chipotle.
Yeah, that sounds real good.
There's nothing better than like using up an ingredient that you bought for a specific thing and you thought, well, where am I going to use the rest of it? And then you like think of a thing and you're like, great, I've used it up. It's not gone to waste. I'm so pleased you managed to put them to use.
I felt like I was actually doing some sort of like actual cook thing.
Yeah.
Because I was using a leftover ingredient and I had an idea of what I could do with it.
That's fun. Like, I love those times when, and you'll get that more and more, Amanda, as you learn to cook through this journey with us. But when you've got, you're not sure what to cook and you go in the fridge and you're just like, I'm just going to rustle something up from whatever's here.
And then my only other thing, we went out to eat. We had some family friends that were in from out of town. And we went to a local barbecue grill kind of place.
Yeah.
It was like the first time I've gone to a restaurant and I ordered a burger and it had the lettuce on the bottom. So it was a real life layer of sadness.
Oh, no.
No. Did you tell them?
I didn't, but I was like, oh, what is this? And I took it off of the bottom and put it on top because why would you put it on the bottom?
Yeah.
But like the food came when I was in the bathroom. So by the time I got there, like it was fully like, it was a layer of sadness.
Gone limp.
That is so sad.
Yeah, the crunch did go.
How about you, Meg? Have you been cooking anything?
So I took a page out of your book, LJ, and did one of the farmers market challenge recipes. As you might have seen on our Instagram, I also made the berry fool, and I picked some blackberries and raspberries up at the farmers market. I should have gone with strawberries, I guess, since that's what the recipe called for, but the blackberries just looked so good. So I made a blackberry and raspberry fool. It turned out great. And then Bon Appétit totally copied my photo on social.
They did. Yeah. Well, not only that, but so first off, we did a back-to-back Instagram post where you put yours and mine, and I didn't say whose was whose. And everyone voted for yours over mine, rightly so, because yours was styled so much nicer. I was like, mine was like 10 o'clock at night. The light had gone. I was like, just take some kind of picture. But yours looked great. And then clearly Bon Appétit saw that and was like, well,
they're like, we have to replicate this brilliant photo.
Wait, so I just want to be sure I know then. So LJ, yours were in the martini glasses?
Yeah.
Okay, and Meg's was in like
I did the pink background with like the pink sort of zag pattern.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I saw the Bon Appetit photo on there, like in my feed, but I thought it was yours I'd already seen. So I just scrolled past it thinking it was yours because Justine said, have you seen that they copied Meg's photo? And I was like, wasn't that just Meg's photo? And she's like, no, it was theirs. I was like, oh.
I think it was a bit of a recursive thing because I had the print magazine and I tried to make it look kind of like how they made it look in the magazine, but that was a different photo than what they posted on social later. And what was posted on social later was the copycat one, I guess.
Copycat, yeah. That's what we're going to call it now, the copycat one.
Yeah, that's obviously what happened.
Yeah.
I also made one of Emil's recipes called For the Love of Cottage Cheese salad. As you might imagine, cottage cheese is the star ingredient here, and it had a whole bunch of fresh veggies. So in with the cottage cheese was grated radishes, and then on top of that was like a olive oil and vinegar salad of heirloom cherry tomatoes, scallions, Persian cucumbers, and it was really good, really tasty. Just like a nice, refreshing, cold summer salad.
What is a Persian cucumber?
So a Persian cucumber is just a small cucumber, so maybe about yay big, and I'd say usually the skin is a little thinner. You could eat the skin on a Persian cucumber, I'd say no problem. Personally, I don't really like the skin either way, but yeah.
So yay big for the listeners was about like 3 inches or so.
Audio format.
Meg's just using the universally agreed standard for yay big, which is all the measurements.
You know, yay.
The veggies all sound brilliant and like right up my street. One thing I have to ask though is, did you like cottage cheese before you made it? Because I've never been a huge fan. I've always seen it as like, my mum used to get it a lot when she was like dieting in the 80s and 90s, and I always used to think it was just like a terrible version of when you could be eating like good cheese.
I did like cottage cheese before I made this, so I guess that would be a little bit of a disclaimer. If you don't like cottage cheese, I don't think this is going to change your mind.
Oh. Okay, duly noted. So, as you may have noticed from Instagram, I finished the Farmer's Market Challenge. So, I completed all 10 dishes, which was not difficult at all, actually. It sounds like a big achievement, but actually it was a lot of fun. It was really manageable because it's only like 2 or 3 in a week. It's really kind of reignited my love of going to the farmer's market and like an actual butcher and an actual fishmonger to go and get your produce from them as opposed to a big chain grocery store. So I've kept doing that. So last weekend was the first weekend I didn't have official Farmers Market Challenge recipes to follow, but me and my husband still got up on the Saturday, went to the farmers market, had thought about what we might want to get and like got stuff that would work for that, and it's just a really nice routine that we've gotten into, so I'm hoping to continue that as the weather gets colder, but we'll see. The other thing that I've been cooking, I dusted off my Folanaise, or artist formerly known as Bolognese, for anyone that's listened to the Bolognese episode. For my friend's birthday, she decided she was going to ask 5 of her close friends to cook a version of a bolognese for a bolognese cook-off. So like the Great British Bolognese competition, or the Super Bowl, we were also calling it. And so we all had to make a bolognese, take it to her place in some kind of Tupperware, and then reheat it in identical foil trays. And we all got assigned a number that only we knew whose each other's were. And she had like a whole bunch of her friends around for her birthday. It was like 17 people. They all had to try a little bit of each of the bolognese with some noodles and rank them in order of which they liked the best, and then they basically totted up all the scores and announced the winner, and I came second. Maybe it turns out my bolognese is not as awful as Andy may seem to think it is.
Congratulations.
I know, like, yours is not the quote-unquote authentic one, but every other bolognese looked the same.
I agree.
I mean, not identical, but they all like looked to be essentially the same sort of idea. Bolognese.
Yeah. That is what in the UK we would think of as a bolognese. So God knows what Andy was thinking.
What you should have done is made your Folanaise and then also made Andy's bolognese, and then you could have put to rest once and for all when everyone obviously would rate yours above his, right?
Yeah, it would be like, what is this? This isn't a bolognese.
This isn't bolognese.
So on the menu for today's episode, we have Brad makes fermented citrus fruits. Yep, it's alive. We've got Rick making adult SpaghettiOs from the test kitchen. The Try Guys try to keep up with a professional chef in our first back-to-back chef episode. Hawa makes Digaag Qumbe. Did I pronounce that correctly? Somali stew from the test kitchen. Professional chefs answer 13 common chicken questions in a test kitchen talks video. David Dobrik tries to keep up with a professional chef in the second back-to-back chef video. And then finally, sneaking in under the wire just before we had to record, we have Andy making grilled scallops from the test kitchen. So let's get started with Brad. It's Alive, making fermented citrus fruit.
I was happy to have another It's Alive, and not like a Going Places, just a regular...
Back to normal.
It's Alive.
Me too.
Yeah.
It was good to see. I don't know, they don't have Vinny anymore, do they? Is this an episode where they don't have Vinny?
Vinny hasn't been on staff for quite a while.
Yeah.
I quite enjoyed, though, the sort of Vinny tribute or memorial where Brad says, "We can't address you, it's too soon." And then there's the sad music with the black silhouette and the flowers. Yeah, that was definitely a nod to Vincenzo.
But I feel the reason why I brought that up is because we know in the real life timeline he's been gone for ages, but I wasn't sure at what point the videos they were putting out he dropped out. But it's nice to see that the editing style's been retained. Like, I can't notice a massive difference from the Vinny episodes. It's like still got the same feel and the same fun.
Well, it's always been Matt Hunzi doing the edits and the captions and the animations. All that's thanks to Hunzi.
Oh, okay.
I will agree that it is a little bit different that we don't have Brad addressing Vinny constantly, which was always the fun sort of trope of the earlier It's Alives. So I do miss that a little bit.
Yeah. It was a bit of a hallmark. I wonder what he'll come up with to do now that Hunzi's doing both the filming and the editing.
Yeah, whatever's going on behind the camera, I felt like this episode was, as you said, Amanda, very classic It's Alive. It has all the hallmarks of the silly jokes, the silly captions, the silly graphics. And my absolute favorite part of this video, I just died, was when Brad says, "Slow clap my ass," and then it cuts to that woman at her laptop with her shocked offended face.
That was
just
really funny.
Caught me so off guard. It was so unexpected. They've never really done a cutaway like that before in It's Alive, which I think is why it impacted me so much, why I found it so funny. I can't tell you how many times I've watched that part of the video, and it actually inspired me to make my first ever GIF. I know that LJ's an expert GIF maker, but I was like, I have to commit this to GIF form.
I've seen them use the cutaway to that woman, like, in one other video, and I'm trying to remember which one it was. I don't know that it was It's Alive. It might have been the Molly pancake one. I can't remember for sure, though.
It wouldn't surprise me if it was a Molly video, because she's known for swearing and therefore shocking that woman.
Yes. I loved the whole, like, Chris and the slow clap. And
that was
when
great.
He's like, "Why don't you guys know about Can't Buy Me Love?" And that they never mention Patrick Dempsey once when he's the star of the movie.
I have to say that I also did not get the Can't Buy Me Love reference, which is surprising because, LJ's shaking her head as well.
I didn't get it either. I've not seen it, but what I did like was that scene with Chris showing it to Brad on his laptop. That inspired them. Did you see that there was a meme? Meme Appétit did a meme of that shot, and they were like swipe to see what Chris was showing Brad, and it was a picture of Toby Goofy.
Toby Goofy. Yes.
I was like, I get that.
Or perhaps he was doing more online spoon shopping, as the video suggested earlier.
Yes. I love that online spoon shopping. My question for you guys, though, even if you don't know that reference from Can't Buy Me Love, I mean, everybody knows what a slow clap is, right?
Yeah, I get what a slow clap is.
I was a little surprised that Brad didn't get the reference more generally.
Yeah, because I feel like it's not just Can't Buy Me Love. Like, people do that all the time. Hell, like, my brother loves to do that as, like, an inside joke with our family. Is he'll be like, "Okay, you get a slow clap for that one."
Correct me if I'm wrong. You're a movie expert, Amanda, but didn't the slow clap kind of originate in Citizen Kane? It's been around forever.
Yeah, that, oh my god, now I really want to, like... I want to deep dive into, like, the cinematic history of a slow clap. But yeah, I mean, Citizen Kane, it's a little bit different because he doesn't start going, like, clap, 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 clap. It's just that
that's true.
He stands up and he is the only person clapping in the whole audience.
Yeah.
And then everybody else joins in.
Yeah. Regardless of Brad's miscommunication with Chris about not understanding it, one thing that from that conversation that I did find out is that Brad was born in 1985, which I did not know, which means he's the same year. He's the same year as me. He's the same age as me. Which I don't know why, but it really blew my mind. I thought he was older.
We also learned that Chris was born in 80. I always like getting this little peek into ages. I guess I didn't know either exactly how old these guys were. So I fall in between. I'm 83. But yeah, I did not get Old Man Morocco's reference. I'm sorry.
Brad was just classic Brad in this episode, which I really enjoyed. There was so many different little rinsey poo moments. I also, the measuring, the way he's trying to describe the quantities that you're meant to use and that just going to shit immediately because he can't remember any of them and he just doesn't. You can tell that he's trying to make it a recipe because that's what Bon Appétit do. But at the same time, he's like, I don't normally do any of this. I just eyeball it.
I love that he claims at first that he, quote, is real precise. As soon as he said that, I was like, Brad, have you watched any of your own videos? And then they call back to that later, which made me really happy because, like, literally 5 minutes later in the video, he's being super imprecise, as always.
But, like, he did the 6 gram pinch and then he just spilled it everywhere. And it's just
like glue all over.
He could not land that 6 gram pinch. He was having a hard time of it. And of course, the Jig 'em at Night, the name of his squidding boat. I love that as well.
I love that, Jig 'em at Night. I wanna go squidding on that boat. I like that also he can't pronounce many things. 2 things that we learnt this video was cephalopods and also Molly correcting him around a mignonette at the end. She was just like, I'm just correcting you. And he was like, yeah, bye, Molly.
Poor Brad, trying his best.
I did like also that they made the point that he was a good boy when he was brushing up against Emil.
I loved that moment when he brushed up against Emil.
Apparently, when you can't get a real dog in an It's Alive episode, Brad will do it in a pinch.
Yeah, which is great. One thing I wanted to ask you guys about is, can you explain to me what Meyer lemons are and why there is beef around them?
I was not aware of a beef either. Maybe this is just a culinary world thing, but my best understanding is that Meyer lemons, I guess, were really trendy, and then they sort of rebelled against that and swung the other way, like, oh, we don't like this food trend anymore. We dismiss you. We don't want that. And also, I guess some people think that Meyer lemons are they smell sort of artificial, like cleaning solution. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if I could honestly tell you the difference side by side between the two. Meyer lemons might be a little bit more yellow.
I just Googled it.
Oh, okay. Facts.
So what makes a Meyer lemon different? They are a small, sweet hybrid thought to be a cross between a regular lemon and a mandarin orange.
Oh.
They're much less tart than regular lemons and smaller with thinner skin that's almost sweet.
Oh, see, I think I'd prefer just a regular lemon. Maybe I'm Adam Rappaport.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. Well, that's a weird flex. I have to say, I really enjoyed the look of the dish that they made at the end. The squid is right up my street. I loved when Brad said he's like Bubba Gump, but with squid. I was like, I would join you in that fantasy.
I loved the rainbow of the completed citrus fruits as well. Very vibrant and beautiful.
Yeah, I feel like so much of what we've talked about hasn't had anything to do with the actual citrus itself. Yeah. But I was like very intrigued by the idea of like this fermented, particularly the lemon for me, because I love lemons. And I was intrigued by the lime too, but then he was like, whatever, it didn't turn out. But I mean, once again, we have that hallmark that we've discussed where when something doesn't work out, it's like good to see that in these videos too.
Yeah.
And he even said like, sometimes you try it and it doesn't work and that's okay.
Yeah,
exactly.
And I like that they told you what to do next time, which was, in this case, get sexier limes.
Speaking of Googling things, Brad commented in the video, why is kumquat such a silly name? And I thought, oh, good question. So I looked it up, and it's actually derived from a Cantonese word meaning golden orange. So in Cantonese, it makes perfect sense.
Oh.
Yeah, it does. That sounds about right. Okie doke. So, Rick making adult SpaghettiOs. Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs.
Yeah, it's not a Rick video if it's not introed with a song.
I feel like Rick and I have that in common.
Well, I feel like that answers my first question, which was going to be, do they have SpaghettiOs in the UK?
Not like that. We have something called spaghetti hoops, which come in a can, and they are not like tiny tubes. They're literally just like rings of pasta. But it doesn't come with meat in it. Well, the classic version doesn't, I don't think. It's just like a sweet tomato-y sauce type thing. And it's the sort of thing you'd give like a kid with some kind of protein. Sometimes you can get spaghetti hoops with sausage in, which is also delicious. But yeah, I haven't had them since I was yay high.
As high as a Persian cucumber.
I don't think I was ever that high.
I had SpaghettiOs occasionally as a kid. I did always like them. I also had the classic kind, or what I feel is the classic kind, without the meatballs. And I suspect that if I tried them again now, I would also find them too sweet, like Rick did. Almost any sort of canned tomato thing you find in America has just a ton of sugar in it. But I would absolutely try his version.
His version looked great. I enjoyed his technique for mixing the meat with the kind of wet ingredients with the two forks, because I was like, you can't ruin that manicure.
Oh, no.
Because if it was me, I would have just got in there with my hands. But I was like, no, Rick knows what he's doing. I'm going to try the two forks technique next time I go to a nail bar.
Speaking of the nail polish, I was reminded of, Amanda, you're sort of sleuthing about which videos were filmed on which days. And I'm pretty sure this was also filmed on the Pozole video day, because it's the same nail polish. And also in the Pozole video, Chris mentioned that he had eaten SpaghettiOs. And that really stood out to me the first time I watched that video, because I was like, Chris Morocco eats SpaghettiOs? But now I think it was all the same day, and he was really eating Rick's SpaghettiOs.
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
That I didn't notice that in the slightest, even though I had to watch the Pozole video several times for reasons will become clear at the end of this episode. So well done, you guys. You're much better at sleuthing than I am. I was very intrigued by Rick's meatballs in this episode, not just his two forks technique, but also the fact that he uses heavy cream instead of milk, to which I was like, meow, you're really going for it there. And also the fact that he uses the ice cream scoop to get his meatballs in the perfect little round shape, the little mini ice cream scoop, which I have seen other people do before, but for some reason seeing Rick do it made me think, yeah, I think I need a dedicated meat scoop. Like that will complete my life in some way.
Do you make enough meatballs to need a dedicated meat scoop?
Probably not, but I just something about Rick using it and me already like paying attention to the fact that he hadn't ruined his nails had me thinking, oh, I just need to do everything that Rick does.
I do feel like, I mean, you could use it for like cookie dough too. Like if you're making like cookies or things like that.
Yeah, for sure.
I do definitely use an ice cream scoop for cookies. I also learned in this video the word panade, which is describing the milk and bread combo that
I didn't know that either. I knew you use milk and bread in meatballs, but I didn't know it had a fancy name. So
I didn't either. I've definitely used this method or approach for meatloaf in particular, but now I know the fancy name for it. I was also impressed by his double skillet flipping skills.
Yeah, I thought it was funny that they dared him to do that, and he was like,
and he's like, challenge accepted.
I was like so impressed because I'm like, I can't do that.
Oh no, me either. I don't think I can even flip one skillet.
No, exactly. I also loved that he made the point to say that he drains his pasta normally rather than taking it out with tongs. I normally drain my pasta too, reserving obviously some of the water for the sauce, but obviously, and my very well salted water as well. But I always drain it, and I didn't do that if anyone's listened to the bolognese episode, I I didn't do that for that because that wasn't what Andy did. And it literally took me like half an hour. I'm exaggerating, but like it felt like half an hour trying to get every kind of noodle out with my tongs because they're so slippery. I just don't understand. Maybe they've got better tongs than I have, or better grip. I don't know. But I was just like, isn't this just going to be easier if I just drain it? Like, this is impossible.
I usually drain as well. It's just more convenient.
Yeah.
It seems like it works better for them when they use like the spider thing.
Yeah, I don't have that, but yeah.
Me either. A thought I had that was echoed by one of the other staff members there, Ryan, was that, is this encroaching on the Gourmet Makes space? It's like a more low-key Gourmet Makes.
Well, yeah, I suppose so. Like, he hasn't had to, like, dissect a SpaghettiO and figure out what's in it. Yeah, it's a less intensive version of that. There is nothing more precious than Rick giggling about alternative brand-protected SpaghettiO names.
That was great.
It was just delightful. His little giggle, it's so cute. So next up, our first back-to-back chef video to discuss: the Try Guys try to keep up with a professional chef. So this is our back-to-back ad infinitum. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I haven't watched loads of the Try Guys, so I don't know them that well. I did watch one of their Eats Everything episode. It was after Justine mentioned to me that it was very similar to what Delaney's doing with his kind of trying everything on a menu series. So I watched the Try Guys Eats Everything to kind of compare it. And as much as Delaney's not my favourite character, I do prefer the BA stuff than the Try Guys stuff. So I was kind of a bit skeptical when I went into this episode to think that whether I would enjoy it. So I don't know how you guys felt going in.
So I think of the three of us, I'm probably the most familiar with the Try Guys. A few years ago, I actually watched them pretty religiously. It was like, oh boy, a new Try Guys video. I'm watching it immediately. And I would say that I've definitely cooled toward them more recently. They used to be a series on BuzzFeed, and they've since spun off to become their own company and make and produce their own videos. Right. So the core concept was the Try Guys. So they would try new things they have never done before. And since spinning off, they've sort of kind of lost that original conceit, and it's more about the personalities. So it's lost a little bit of the appeal for me. I was going to recommend for BA fans that Eat the Menu probably has the most similarity to any type of BA video, so I'm glad that you mentioned it. But yeah, the crossover is a little odd. The brands and the voices are very different. Since you did watch the Try Guys Eat the Menu, it's very silly. None of these guys have any sort of expertise in food.
No.
So it's more like, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, without any sort of really like educational element. Another type of Try Guy video I might recommend, though, for the BA audience is that they have a few episodes where they attempt to cook something without a recipe. So there's one video where they make bread without a recipe, or they make a pie without a recipe. Right. And I'm sure you can imagine how disastrous the results are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely feel like I fall in between you two. I haven't watched any of the Try Guys since they split from BuzzFeed, but I did used to watch some of their BuzzFeed videos more often, not as much as you did, Meg, but the one that I always remember was when they tried to see what it would be like to have a period.
Oh.
And they had to, like, wear pouches that would actually, like, have stuff come out of it all day, and they went and had, like, electric probes, like, on their abdomens to feel what cramping would be like.
Yeah.
And things like that. So that was kind of what I liked about the Try Guys, is they would do things like that, or, you know, like actually try things that were, you know, not necessarily food related.
Yeah.
I wasn't like disappointed that it was going to be them. I thought it was going to be kind of interesting to see where their level of like cooking was with Carla, but I feel like their interplay worked well with Carla.
I do think overall it worked pretty well.
Well, from the very beginning, I was like, I'm not sure these guys are going to be my thing, but if anyone's going to whip them into shape, it will be Carla.
Yeah.
And she had a really good rapport with them. But I have to say, the whole way through, maybe it was because of the type of dish they were preparing, because what they were using to make that carpaccio is like filet mignon and scallops and just stuff that's really decent ingredients and really expensive. In the case of filet mignon, I was just like, these guys are just butchering this, and they're not listening to Carla. I was like, shut up. I was like, less messing around, more listening to Carla. And even when they did listen to Carla, like the bit where she was like, don't whack the tuna too much, like just give it a light tap, he just was like, just to see.
Did it anyway,
and I was just like, I don't know about you, but I was the kind of kid in class that did what the teacher said. And so I was just, all those feelings came back. I was like, what are you doing? She just said.
Yeah, it was definitely a very chaotic energy. The guys are so in step with each other and know what to anticipate about each other that they just sort of they kind of railroaded Carla sometimes. They'd just be talking and talking and be rowdy, and she'd just sort of have to talk over them.
Yeah.
When he did smash the tuna, and he said, sometimes you just gotta make the mistake in order to learn, and she shared, oh yeah, I've done that with my kids and let them burn themselves, and they were like, whoa, we need to not mess with this lady.
But I was also like, that is what I aspire to be. If I ever do have kids, I will be that kind of mum. I was like, I want Carla's parenting book.
And Carla's so funny on her own, but her brand of humor is so much more mellow and understated than these guys. But I do think ultimately they kind of met somewhere in the middle. They weren't quite as oil and watery as I thought they might be. And it seemed like Carla was having a good time, which is something I'm sure I'll come back to in the next back-to-back video. It's like, well, as long as Carla's having a good time, maybe she's just the best sport ever and really good at concealing when she's annoyed. But it's like, Carla's having fun, I can have fun too.
Yeah, I think there's a reason they put her in charge of the back-to-back, because I think she's good at being patient with people and sort of dealing with antics and things like that, probably because she is a mom.
Yeah.
And one thing that I found kind of interesting about this is that they were doing carpaccio, because I think I said on an earlier one, I've watched all of the back-to-backs now, and one of the early ones when they brought her in instead of the professional, quote unquote, I mean, she's a professional chef, but like celebrity chef, was a vegetarian carpaccio with Natalie Portman.
Yeah.
Like watching the two different carpaccios, I enjoyed that a lot more. I feel like she and Natalie Portman got along a little bit better. Like, you know, it wasn't as chaotic as it was with four guys. But I am not a big seafood person, which we'll come back around to later, I'm sure. So I also was like, oh yeah, I'd be much more into eating like all the veggies and like radishes and things like that.
Well, I think that was part of what was irritating me so much, because I love meat and fish carpaccio, and so I was just like, respect this dish. Respect Carla. But I have to say, although I've given them a bit of a sass in this kind of recap, I would say one thing I did like about them is they were so clearly huge fans of BA.
Oh, yes. Eugene was a huge fan.
Yeah. When Gabby walked past, Eugene just stopped everything. I was like, hi, Gabby, like really starstruck. And I was just like, that is how I would be. And I could really relate to that. And when they kind of asked Carla how she felt about the fact that, you know, BA videos have just become so popular, and to see Carla's reaction, that she was just so happy and she just couldn't be happier about the fact that BA internet culture's become a thing. It was just really nice to see that interaction as well.
I really appreciated that too. Eugene was like the audience surrogate. He was acting how I probably would act, you know, saying hi to Gabby, wanting to get validation from Chris, just complimenting the test kitchen in general. I was really glad to have that element. It's always nice to see true fans interacting with the creators, and like you said, to see Carla obviously so like pleased and humbled about the reception the test kitchen has received.
It was nice. It was really nice. Next up, we have Hawa making Digaag. Oh, I've done it. Oh, fuck's sake. I'm going to have to get her to play her sister saying. Next up, we have Hawa making Digaag Qumbe, which I really have butchered that pronunciation, but it's Somali stew, and it's by a chef called Hawa Hassan, who's come in as a special appearance, which I think it's quite nice to have someone new. I really enjoyed Hawa as a presenter. I thought she was really engaging. I loved hearing all about her background and what food is like in Somalia, because I had no idea, and it sounds delicious. And the stew that she made, I thought was really interesting, and how she tied it into the kind of food history of Somalia and the fact that they use lots of spices because they're on that spice export route from India, the big coastline they've got there. I just thought that was super interesting because I love history and learning all about different cultures and countries and stuff. So I have to say, when I was on board, I was so on board with her right up until the end when she said, I serve this with a banana. And I was like, what? Why have you done this to me? Right at the end, I was literally like in love with you and your food, and now you've just ruined it all.
It was a personal attack directed just at you.
I feel like it was, because who eats a stew with a banana? That just seems silly.
I'm in total agreement, except that I was with her the whole way. The banana did not turn me off at the end. I found her presence to be really cheerful, very sunny, very engaging, which is always nice. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate this sort of trend in the Bon Appétit videos to really explore the whole world of food and to introduce new cuisines that the average American viewer is probably unfamiliar with. Sort of like the Christina video. It's really nice to have someone speak about their background and their relationship to the dish. Yeah, just explain it in an approachable, appealing way where any viewer really can be like, yeah, I want to try that. And, diversity matters. And I think especially in the food world, instead of just like co-opting a cuisine and Americanizing it, it's like, well, let's get people who can actually speak to this type of food.
Yeah, I found all of like both of you said, like the culture around it, I found really interesting. Here in Columbus, we have a really large Somali population. So it was really interesting to see. A part of me wanted to be like, hey, people in Columbus, you should watch this and be more respectful of people who have immigrated to our area. I mean, not everyone in Columbus, but certain areas. And I just thought it was really interesting and an accessible way to be like, look, this is a different kind of food. And obviously I'm a picky eater, but even I was like intrigued by this. And I thought, maybe I should try to search out one of like the Somali restaurants and try something.
Yeah.
Instead of like being afraid of it.
I had no idea that Somalia was an Italian colony and had that influence on it. Like, that was just something I had no idea about. But it was just so interesting to hear her speak about that and to be like, we eat a lot of pasta, we have a lot of that influence, but we also combine it with all of the spices and stuff that we get from the spice trade. And I was just like, this is just so fascinating. I love that she spoke about turmeric particularly, because that's something I'm really trying to incorporate more into what I'm eating at the moment, because it's a really good anti-inflammatory. And I have gut issues at the moment, which is super boring, but it does mean I get to eat a lot of turmeric. So
would you put it on your face like she suggested?
I actually would, because when she said like they do, it's like they use it as a face mask. I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. If it didn't cost an arm and a leg to get that quantity to put it on my face, I probably would. Maybe I can find some sort of bulk deal somewhere.
Mm-hmm. I was so fascinated that she lives here in the US and her family lives in Oslo. That definitely, I don't know, like that intrigued me. And I also wanted to be like, well, how do they do, we talked about like Americanizing food, but like what would the combination of like Somalian food and Norwegian food be? Like,
right.
I feel like that would be a really interesting combination.
I also liked that the test kitchen was obviously very welcoming of her. They were, really trying to get her to loosen up and asking her a bunch of questions. And I loved that every time she asked for something, it just magically appeared.
That was cool. I really like that as well.
Like, if I had this herb, and here it is.
I wish my kitchen were like that.
I also love that they had her sauces as well, because she is the CEO of a company that makes these kind of Somalian sauces, which to me sounded delicious. And it was just funny when she was like, oh, I didn't bring any with me to plug. And they were like, oh, we've got some.
Right?
It was so
that was
cute.
awesome.
Yeah.
That was kind of the only thing I didn't like about this video is in the cold open, she said, "Where's the boss boss? Oh, here's the boss boss." And I was like, what? Like, I actually rewound it a couple times because I'm like, I guess I just don't understand what she's saying. And then it wasn't until later in the episode where they're like, and I have this hot sauce brand called Boss Boss. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Molly confirmed kind of what I was thinking the dish might taste like. She said it's savory and then the banana adds the sweetness. And there's also the contrast of the hot dish versus the cold banana. And it's like, oh yeah, seems like a pretty smart accompaniment to the main dish. If you don't hate bananas.
It's so hard for me because in theory, I really hate when people like, I don't mean this as an insult to you, Amanda. I understand it because I used to be a fussy eater too. So I really understand how annoying it can be when people are fussy. I get it. Like, I want to be one of those people that's like, sure, I'll try your weird way of doing things. It's just bananas. It's just this one food I can't eat and it ruins everything for me.
No, it's okay. I mean, I don't know. Like, sometimes it's a texture thing.
Yeah.
So, like, I never, like, get upset with anybody for not. Like, in my household, I love spicy food, but other people don't. And so I usually have, like, my hot sauce and then just, like, keep it to the side.
Yeah.
And, things like that.
Oh, and one thing I really liked was when she presented the finished Somali stew and put it in front on the main kind of bench and went, "Oh, that smells really good. Get blessed by this scent," and kind of wafted it at the crew. I just thought that was such a lovely thing to say.
Blessed by the scent.
I'm going to say that next time I serve something delicious. Okay, so next up we have professional chefs answering 13 common chicken questions in a Test Kitchen Talks video. I don't know about you, but these are not 13 common chicken questions in my house. Some of those questions were wild, man. Like, 1, who washes their chicken? 2,
right.
When is chicken gamey? Like, what are these? What chickens are people buying?
I loved how Brad and Priya were just like, no.
Yeah, they seemed really confused. Yeah, I feel like Priya and Brad were you, LJ, because they were just like dumbfounded by every single question. Brad looked like he was ready to give up. He was like, I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah, he was just like, what even is that question? He had to read some of them twice.
Although I do have to say one question, I thought to myself, did I write this? I feel like this is me. So that question was, quote, "I'm super paranoid about salmonella, so I always overcook the chicken. Any tips for beating this?" To which Emil very helpfully suggested therapy.
Yeah. And I also liked Molly's attitude, which is actually quite akin to mine, that was like, if salmonella was on your chicken, you get it anyway, so it doesn't matter.
What, that is actually a very good point that I hadn't thought of before.
Because that's what I think. I'm like, there's not a lot you can do, like, it's gonna happen, so don't worry about it.
Well, I like that Emil's other tip, instead of therapy, it was like, or go eat this raw chicken somewhere.
Well, so the thing is, that place is Ipuku, which is in Berkeley, so I could go there. But the idea of eating chicken tartare, just thinking about it, I'm like, bleh.
That's something I would do. I'm quite adventurous when it comes to food in terms of raw food. I don't have an issue with raw food at all, like as we noticed from on the Carpaccio back-to-back chef video. I was really into that, so I would try that, even though chicken is probably the most risky thing you could do that with.
I wonder if that's a bit of a cultural thing, because I have to say, when I visited London, meats in general were not cooked as well done as I would say they are in America.
I would say London's quite a foodie city, like most big cities, to be honest. I imagine they'll be trying to cook it so that it tastes the best it can, which oftentimes with meat is like medium rare or whatever. Whereas I think if you went outside to what I call the nations and regions, which is like the rest of the UK, like the country, there people would be a bit more wary of like fancy food. It would be just like, no, cook it all the way through, that kind of thing.
That makes sense.
How do you guys feel about chicken skin? Because I'm a massive fan, so I don't understand why people think it's gross.
Oh, me too. I love a crispy chicken skin.
For me, it just kind of depends on what mood I'm in. Like, sometimes I'll eat it, sometimes I won't. It just, sometimes, like, if I don't want to kind of have that extra fat, I won't eat it. But, you know, if it's cooked really well, I probably will. It just kind of depends.
I always want the extra fat.
Me too.
I don't know. If it's like kind of like slimy and soggy, I'm not as
No, I'll eat
into
it. I also enjoyed their answers to whether or not you should reheat chicken, because obviously
Oh my gosh.
you end up overcooking it. And they were just like, one thing I loved was all the Post-its, which I don't know if you did the same thing, Meg, but I paused to write them down.
I did.
It was like, no, never, not allowed. Your chicken will suffer. Stop it. Unacceptable. Nope.
Okay, here's the thing. I literally had a conversation with my mother-in-law like last week about how I prefer cold chicken.
Yeah, it's great.
It is very good.
I think there's nothing better than the day after you've cooked like a whole chicken and you haven't had time to like carve all the meat off the bone yet. It's still on the bone. You've just put it in the fridge and wrapped it. And then the next day you're like, oh, what should I have for lunch? And then you bring it out and you just stand there by the fridge with like a jar of mayonnaise or something, just pulling chicken off the bone and dipping it and eating it. It's just one of the best meals. I just don't understand why you would want to reheat it when it's like so delicious like that.
But like I mentioned earlier, I made the chicken salad. Like I love that.
And like you said, LJ, just eating the meat straight off the chicken. See also how I said before, how I love eating things with my hands. So you just pull off a nice bit of chicken.
Me too.
Dunk it in some mayo. Emil was definitely the MVP of this video for me. When he was going off about the hot chicken, he's like, are you happy now? You made your whole family sick because you wanted to eat hot chicken.
Yeah, exactly. I also really enjoyed that they pointed out something that I think is underrated and not talked about enough, which is the oysters of a chicken, which is like the underside. Yes. That's the bit I always eat, because usually when we have a roast chicken, which we do most weeks, because it's good for lunches, like the next day, as we've just discussed. So my husband usually roasts it, which means that I do the clear up after. And I love that because it means I get to go back to the like cooling bird and flip it over and just have a little snack as I work and like do the dishwasher or the dishes. And I always goes for those bits because they're the best bits.
Okay. I have to mention, I knew about the oysters because my favorite movie is Amelie. And there's a whole part where like, in general, like it's a thing throughout the whole movie where they talk about like characters' likes and dislikes. And one of the characters' favorite things is to make a roast chicken and carve it and eat the oysters. And so I got to have like warm, fuzzy Amelie feels in the middle of this also.
The little lump in the rump, quoth Molly.
And then Emil's face is like, I have to say, one thing I do notice or have noticed about these Test Kitchen Talks videos, and I noticed they were saying this in the comments as well, is that they seem to have filmed them all on the same day so far, because they've all been in the same pairings and they've all been wearing the same clothes. But the other thing is that the current pairings, I feel like some of them work really well, like the Priya and Brad and the Emil and Molly that we've just discussed. But I feel like the Gabby and Chris pairing doesn't seem to be working so well, because I get the vibe that Gabby seems kind of intimidated by Chris's expertise and knowledge, and so she doesn't end up saying very much in them, which makes me sad, because I don't care that Gabby is not like a professional chef like Chris. Like I still want to hear what she thinks, and I feel like because he's just so confident in his opinion, he ends up kind of talking over her a bit of the time, which makes me sad for him as well, because I don't feel like that's not showing him in his best light either. So I hope they start mixing up the pairings.
I agree. I noticed this as well. He just answers immediately and then keeps going. And as you said, Gabby just seemed to agree with what he said without offering her own input. So yeah, I'd like to see the pairings mixed up as well.
Switch it up a bit.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see when there's like a quote-unquote wardrobe change on the Test Kitchen Talks.
They just get changed for a different day.
Yeah, we'll be like, it's a new day. But I was very happy that we got a Test Kitchen Talks this time around, because I feel like this was sort of a comeback after the plating a carrot challenge that we didn't like.
We didn't like that one. Yeah. Okay, so our second back-to-back chef to discuss is David Dobrik. Or Dobrik Dobrik? I don't care if it is his name. David Dobrik tries to keep up with a professional chef. So, question, Who is he?
Who is this guy?
I had to Google him because I did not know who he was.
I also had to Google him. And in fact, I feel like we haven't done a service and like shouting out Justine enough in this episode yet. She texted me last night. She asked me if I had watched it and if I knew who the guy was. And she was like, "We're too old. You will not like him. Prepare your disappointment face."
I had a disappointment face right from the first second because I was
Me
like,
too.
did this dude really start by spitting out my queen's food? What
Right?
is happening?
Okay, here's the thing where I had the biggest issue is clearly he made up a food allergy and didn't tell them his actual like oppositions to food, because they've always been very careful that if somebody is like vegetarian, like I mentioned Natalie Portman earlier, that they'll find a dish that will work for them. And if you don't like seafood at all, that is something you should tell them before you show up. Because I'll admit, if I had to be forced to eat seafood, I might throw up. But I would not have been an asshole and not told them ahead of time. Okay, I'll step down off my soapbox. I was so upset.
Well, yeah, I share your upset, Amanda, because it's just, what it made me question is how back-to-back chef works, like the arrangements behind the scenes, the logistics of getting them on there. Because I was like, do they get to pick their own dish? Because up until this point, I thought that they did, but clearly not. It's a surprise. It sounded like from the conversation they had at the end of this video, because Carla turned to him and said, "You're allergic to coconut." So that, to me, says they had asked him if there was anything he couldn't eat ahead of time. And he had just bullshitted, like you said, and said anything. So I was like, what is this? Like, how does it work? Like, do they ask you your allergies and then just assign a dish and then it's a surprise? And if that's the case, then he's an idiot for not telling them that he can't eat seafood.
Very upsetting, very awkward. And it's also like, well, if this is just a bit that he's playing up, if he's like, I'm going to really just exaggerate everything to be funny or attempt to be funny, it's like, well, maybe you should reconsider your bit in which you're going on a cooking show and just acting really averse to literally everything you put in your mouth. It was not endearing to me.
No.
I just think I'm not this guy's target audience.
It just came across to me as disrespectful to Carla. And I felt really sorry for Carla to having to struggle through that, because I think she did a great job. Like, she was very professional. She didn't any time like show that because if it had been me, I'd be like, why don't you just leave? Like, it's not going to work. Whereas she did her job and did a good job of it. But I just was like, this is not fun to watch for me. I don't like someone acting like Carla's food is not great, because I believe that her food probably is delicious, whether or not you like shrimp or not. It's fun to watch them when they don't know how to cook and like struggle through that. It's not fun for them to act repulsed by everything that they're doing.
There have been episodes where people were like, oh, I'm just like, I didn't expect this and I'm a little unsure. Like Nina Dobrev, she had to cut up some sort of animal flesh. And she was like, I've never had any issues like eating meat, but now I'm like thinking about it. But like, she was like, no, I would still, you know, at no point was she like disrespectful to Carla in the way that I felt like he was. It just was very frustrating, because I feel like you have had people go like, oh, I'm unsure, but like, they allow Carla to talk them through it. And I feel like he had just up this block that he, like you said, like, oh, he's doing this for a bit. And I did read, he also married somebody's older mother for a YouTube video.
What?
And they're earlier this year.
This video raised another production question for me, kind of along those lines. What was the thought process behind booking him on the show? Because the Try Guys were obviously on their press junket for their book, but he had nothing specific to plug. They didn't even mention that he was part of the Vlog Squad, which I guess is what he's best known for, which I had to look up following this video.
Yeah.
And I was just like, is the thought process behind here just, he's a YouTube personality, Bon Appétit's on YouTube, ergo, our audience will love this. And obviously that's misguided if that was the thought process behind this.
I went into the YouTube comments on this because I was interested to see how this this went down with people that were watching it. There were a lot of his viewers commenting positively, obviously, because they like him. But there were a few comments that I found interesting. One mentioned that he had managed to get a gig as a judge on a Food Network show.
Oh.
But they mentioned that it was basically he had made up that he had some kind of experience in testing food, and his agent had used that to get him this, like the Food Network just believed it, even though it's not true. But I'm like, he's not good at it. Like, I don't like it. It's not fun. And of course, that came from a YouTube comment, so how true it is, I don't know. But like, yeah,
right.
I just was not a fan watching him on this video. It didn't make me want to watch him. It made me feel really sorry for Carla, and I just hope they don't try and do a similar kind of booking in the future, because I just think it was a bit of an error in judgment.
I agree. And Carla's such a saint. Bless that woman.
I would love to learn how to make your summer rolls, Carla.
Me too. And I wouldn't puke into a trash can. And I'd also eat shrimp heads with her. They're really good deep fried.
Of all the seafood, shrimp is the only one that I will eat, so I would not have actually thrown this out.
Good. But if you had a problem with it, you would have said before you started.
I would have said beforehand. Yeah.
When she said that about the shrimp heads, Meg, I've never had shrimp heads, and now I really want to have them because I didn't even know you could eat them.
I like it. It's pretty popular in Japan. So it was like as Carla described, it's the whole shrimp deep fried.
Wow.
So that includes the head, and you just eat it all tip to tail. It's good. I mean, it's so fried that everything is just
crispy,
crunchy and soft, and I really liked it.
Is it a bit like soft shell crab?
Yes, I would definitely make that comparison. Yeah.
Great.
So I'm actually really glad that we got this last video at the last moment to have a sort of palate cleanser so that we don't have to end on a down note.
Or a scallop cleanser. Because, now we're going to talk about Andy making grilled scallops.
I won't eat scallops, but this was such a delight.
I love scallops. I think they are a delight. So as soon as I saw that this was what was happening, I was like, ran straight to YouTube and pulled up the video and watched it. It was the cover recipe on the June-July issue, which they kept mentioning that he's a double cover star now, which is very exciting for him. I really loved this episode because I think I loved how he tried to make the concept of grilling something that's deemed kind of complex or fancy or difficult, and showed how easy it actually is, because I think scallops have this reputation of being something that's difficult to cook. They're really not. Like, they're no different than any other kind of fish or meat, I guess, and I like that he showed how simple it can be. Also loved his idea for the marinade that's not a marinade. With the nori.
Not a marinade.
Asterisk, not a marinade. Over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And we had the return of Brad's panda shirt.
Yeah,
in this episode.
I noticed that. I also thought it was funny because Brad literally walked past the camera about 4 times, and then he was like, "So, you're talking scallops?" And I was like, "You were angling to get on that."
It's like a dog whistle. He hears the word scallops, and he's just there instantly with his opinions.
Yeah, it was really funny.
What you were saying about scallops and what Andy was saying about them being kind of intimidating, something I found really interesting, harkening back to the Try Guys episode, was just what the inside of a scallop actually looks like and what it takes to clean it. I had no idea.
Yeah.
That was really fascinating. Yeah, and props to Andy for doing yet another recipe where he has to say skewers over and over.
Skewers.
I also like that he showed the double skewering technique as well.
Mm-hmm. And then made a double entendre joke about it.
Yeah.
I also like that he talked about soaking the skewers, because I can remember back in high school having some sort of like cookout and not knowing that you were supposed to soak the skewers first. And so I just like put a bunch of stuff on and then they all like burned. So for someone like me who does not know cooking the way that like some of you guys do, I feel like that's a good tip to have in there.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, Amanda, because my husband fairly recently made something with skewers and forgot to soak them. And I was like, what is your problem? You watch Bon Appétit. Surely you know. And he was like, oh, I forgot. So
it's one of those tips where even though he did mention it, he didn't explain why. And I feel like it would be very helpful to explain, because someone might just be like, soaking the skewers. Why would you do that? You know, and like,
Yeah.
oh, I can skip that.
This video also made me add to my list of things to buy. So I want a spice mill grinder thing. And I also am like, can I get a grill in my kitchen? Because it's just like every time they go to clean the grill with that big broom, I'm like, I really want one of those. Like, that would be great.
I also added to my want to try list Urfa, the chili flake from Turkey that he mentioned. I don't think I've ever had that before.
I haven't. No, it looked good. I really want to try that marinade actually, because the idea of using kind of a nori powder just sounded amazing, like really delicious. Salt on salt.
Chris Morocco comes in with his super palette and is like, oh, this has nori and this and this and chili, and I'm like, oh my god, you're a food genius, Chris.
I did like the Japanese flavor profiles that were introduced here, the nori like you mentioned, and he also mentioned how they like to put mayo on a bunch of Japanese dishes like okonomiyaki and takoyaki. So of course any opportunity to add mayo, I'm all for.
Have you started doing, because of Bon Appétit, I certainly have, spreading, like if you've got sauce to serve with something, like spreading it artfully on a plate and then layering your like meat or whatever on the top. I've started doing that. Like I had something with baba ganoush at the weekend that I'd made, and I was like, normally I would serve like the meat and the veg and then just a spoon of it on the side, and I was like, no, I'm gonna spread it like a little painting, and then I'm gonna put my little meat on. And yeah,
I don't think I have, but I will absolutely remember to do so now.
Yeah, same. One thing I wanted to mention before I forget, my favorite part of this whole video was the ouch of the scallops. Ouch. Every time you like stabbed them, because I giggled so much, and then they did it multiple times. Ouch. Oh my god, I loved it.
I wanted to ask you guys, did anyone else think Andy was hungover? I kind of got that impression for some reason.
I didn't get that impression, but maybe I just read it differently. I'm not saying that he wasn't. He could have been.
I don't know. It just seemed like he was loose, like looser than he normally is.
Maybe it was like the end of the day and he was all like, yeah, get to go home. Maybe it was like a Friday. I don't know. What I want to know is what Brad and Gabby were gossiping about.
Yeah, me too.
Now we know that when Gabby's quiet, she's talking shit.
I think that must have been true, because when Andy said that, everyone in the test kitchen laughed. Everyone. And I was like, oh, this must be true.
The other thing I liked when Brad was talking with Andy was when they were talking about the difference between male and female scallops. And they said the females are sweeter and richer, like real life. It's like, oh, you guys. Well, great. That was a good bunch of videos. I think now that we've recapped, shall we talk about what our favourite one was from the bunch, and then which dish we would make out of that collection?
My favorite video was Brad makes fermented citrus. I think that It's Alive or Gourmet makes will probably almost always win if they are among the batch of videos we've watched. I just like classic Brad. It was a really funny, fun video. The dish that I think I'd be most likely to make is Rick's adult SpaghettiOs. Seems pretty easy. I like pasta. I like meatballs.
You get to sing.
Oh, this is so hard. Okay, so I'm going to start with what I would make would be the adult SpaghettiOs also. Partly because like almost every other dish was seafood. And that's not my thing. But yeah, the adult SpaghettiOs. And even while I was watching it, I was like, oh, I feel like this is a manageable thing, maybe, that I could do. And then my favorite one, oh, this is a really hard one for me to choose, because I tend to always pick It's Alive, but I'm going to go with Andy Makes Grilled Scallops, because it just really, I don't know, it made me laugh multiple times, and I just found it so delightful.
Yeah, I think I'm the same as you, Amanda. I was really torn between the first and the last, so Brad and Andy. I think I'm going to go with Andy. I don't know if it's just because I watched Brad so long ago. It feels like now and Andy's like more fresh in my mind because I just watched it. But maybe it's because Brad was what I was expecting, but I wasn't expecting this Andy video to be as funny as it ended up being. So maybe that's what it is. It's like my expectations were just exponentially like smashed with the Andy video.
I wasn't expecting that shocked woman at her laptop.
That's true. I would make the carpaccio that the Try Guys made in the back-to-back chef, because it is every step I was like, oh, this looks so good. A meat plate and then, you know, more tuna and caviar and oil, and it just looked delicious. So yeah.
That squid salad Brad made was a close second for me.
Oh yeah, that was good actually. All right, so after the recap, we now like to do shout-outs in our episodes. So we've had loads of people get in touch with us over the past couple of weeks. So hi to Mrs. Casper on Twitter, I think she's Mrs. Casper Cooks on Twitter. She made the tomato galette from BA's August issue, which looked amazing. We also had Meg, your mum. She's got in touch. She's still listening, so you know we've not lost her as a listener yet. She really enjoyed Amanda's episode with the boozy ice pops from last week. Said that she was really liked how you persevered, Amanda, and did a really good job.
Aw. Thanks, Mary.
So, and she wasn't the only one who listened to the ice pops and enjoyed it. Cult of Domesticity podcast said, please send them over here. So they want to taste them. Erica from the Lez Represent podcast also loved the ice pops and said that you were her hero because it was refreshing and funny to hear someone who's not an expert but still humorous. It was a humorous palate cleanser that adds so much.
Thank you so much.
Diana from Happily Ever Aftermath also listens to the Boozy Ice Pops episode. So yeah, lots of fans of the Ice Pops. I have to say I really enjoyed the episode as well. Thanks. Sunny from Book of Lies got in touch after Justine, her white pesto vegan pasta episode went out, saying that she has a recipe for vegan ricotta. And Katie from Thank Fucking God It's Friday also enjoyed Justine's white pesto pasta. So that had some fans too. And finally, Jaslyn from Up in 10 Club shared her experience of trying Pop-Tarts for the first time because they never caught on in New Zealand, where she's from, but she was on the light rail in Portland, Oregon, when it stopped outside a convention centre and several people holding Pop-Tarts got on, and they said that American Idol had been recording and Pop-Tarts was sponsoring, and they handed out packets of a new flavour, which Jasmine can't remember which flavour it was, but that was the first time she tried them, and she tried them toasted and untoasted and said they were too sweet. So that goes to show maybe, you know, there are some American cultural phenomenon that's never going to cross any kind of borders.
Never going to take off.
So, and thank you to everyone else who got in touch with us that I haven't read out. We love hearing from everyone every week. So please continue to do so. Let us know what you're making and all of that lovely stuff, because it's great to see.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
So this week, we'd also like to share a review that we've got from Katie, again, from the Thank Fucking God It's Friday podcast, which is newly returned, which I'm very excited about because
Yay.
I really like listening to her podcast with her co-host Drew. She has reviewed us, giving us 5 stars, saying, this podcast is so much fun to listen to. I thought it might be overwhelming with 4 hosts, but they know what they're doing. That's debatable. And the result is pure entertainment. I especially like that the hosts are from separate locations and even cultures, because hearing about their different cooking and baking experiences is fascinating. Using grams as a measurement sounds so complicated, LJ. It's really not. Brad makes it look a lot more complicated than it is. And she said she can't wait for more. So that's really nice. Thank you, Katie.
Oh, thanks, Katie.
Thanks, Katie.
So yeah, thank you for joining us this week. Don't forget to join us next week when I will be making Pozole Verde, because it's Pozole time.
Thanks for listening to Pod Appétit, a Bon Appétit fan cast.
We'd love to hear from you, so find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest at pod_appétit.
and on Facebook at Pod Appétit Podcast.
You can also email us at podappetitpodcast@gmail.com and find all of our episodes on our website, podappetitpodcast.com.
Until next time, the test kitchen is closed.
Hi, I'm Vanessa, and I'm the host of Fabled, a bi-weekly podcast that explores mysteries, legends, lore, ghosts, and fairy tales. Investigation of these tales of woe often reveal grim details that have been long hidden in dark corners of history. Every story is a mix of both fact and fiction, and so are the episodes. Look for me anywhere you listen to podcasts, and say hello on social media at Fabled Collective. So go ahead, settle in. I want to tell you a story, and then maybe I'll tell you the truth.